Hey guys, it's Nathan, and I'm back to do another reaction video. And it's getting like nighttime. It's just 11:40 from where I'm at, and I'm just gonna keep this as volume as low as possible because some might be sleeping. Anyway, the video I'm gonna be reacting to is like top 25 lost episode creepypastas, and and I know you think it's kind of I'm like boring or even don't care as much, but it, I guess but I'll just do those for like a while. So it's okay. Anyway, let's get started in 3, 2, 1, go. Yep, you're gonna have your heads fucked. Probably your childhood's.
This video contains disturbing content, violent content, jump scares, and sudden loud noises. Viewer discretion advised.
Ooh, Squidward.
A lost episode is a style of animation in an episode which is either witnessed by the production crew of the show or an individual who somehow came across it through whatever means.
These episodes were lost due to being disturbing, creepy, or flat out inappropriate for younger audiences.
Yeah.
Some of the content was apparently shown on TV, but was pulled off the air because of complaints or other reasons.
So let's begin the top 25 lost episode creepypasta.
By the way, you're gonna hear like the full explanation of or some explanation of what they covered before. Number 25.
Doug's Real Life. Doug was an animated sitcom that focused mainly on the early adolescent life of its title character, Douglas or Doug Funny, who experiences common predicaments while attending school in his new hometown of Bluffington.
I've never seen it.
Doug narrates each story from his journal, and the show incorporates many imagination sequences.
Okay, I've seen a little bit.
However, in the fall of 2005, after the show Doug had finished airing, it came back for just 1 week. The 4 episodes were okay, but the 5th was completely different. It started with the intro animations of the line drawings. The characters never appeared.
Weird.
The lines continued as normal, reacting as if the usual characters were there. Once the intro ended, it switched to show Doug in a dark room, writing in his journal. He wasn't narrating his writing like he usually would do in the show. He just silently wrote for about a minute. The episode itself opened with Doug eating breakfast. He was giving a voiceover about how there was a big test that he had neglected to study for.
Like everyone else.
His family was having a normal conversation, and then the screen started to flash. The flashes seemed to be showing some sort of image or message, but it was impossible to decipher. Doug left his house and began walking to school. Mrs. Wingo announced that Doug had flunked the test. The entire class started laughing at him. When Doug got to school, the screen flashed again. It began to resemble a negative film. Doug was walking through the school hallway, which was full of kids who had never been seen on the show before. But no one paid any attention to him as Doug walked to his desk. The scene then changed to the end of school and Doug was walking home. Pork chop turned into a hunk of rotting meat, and Doug's house became decrepit. He sat down at an empty table. The phone rang, and Doug's mom answered it. He instantly thought it was his teacher telling them all about how he flunked the test. Doug had a fantasy about his parents yelling at him for failing the test. They grew to giant sizes and their faces became twisted and dark red.
Every kid ever.
Doug was crying and apologizing. He went up to his bedroom, which was completely empty except for a book and a pencil. Doug picked up the book and started writing. And he narrated this time, but it was incredibly short. All he said was, "I can't tell which one is real."
Yeah, it's not really too violent, to say the least. Number 24.
Axis Powers, Italia, episode 23.5.
I've seen it a little bit.
Italia is a short-based anime with a lovable cast of the world's nations portrayed as humans, stereotypically based on their origins.
Dubbed by Funimation.
One episode was featured on a bootleg DVD, which is not shown to be part of the original series. The show starts off with the Axis power nations, Germany, Japan, and Italy, sitting on a tropical island, obviously stranded.
Ooh.
Italy, of course, was his usual nonchalant self, but Germany and Japan seemed a little more grim, obviously worried. After some banter between the two nations in unsubbed Japanese, it appears that the two had come to a horrifying agreement.
Damn.
The scene changes to that of night. It shows the three nations sleeping around the fire. In unison, Germany and Japan stand and carefully pick up the sleeping Italy, cautious of not waking him. They then take him to the water's edge and begin to drown him. Behind the muffled screams and whimpers, all that is heard is Japan repeating,
Gomenasai Italia.
or sorry, Italy, while Germany is found looking away from the act, obviously choking back tears. After the deed is done, they carry the seemingly lifeless corpse of Italy back to the camp. Japan draws his sword and begins to cut open Italy and harvest his organs. While doing this, Germany puts the organs on sticks and roasts them on the fire. After some time passes, Germany and Japan take the cooked organs off the fire, and after a quick acknowledgement of their friend's sacrifice, they begin to eat the bloody morsels.
Like cannibals.
Shortly after they begin their meal, Italy suddenly wakes up and begins to go into a panic at the scene presented before him.
As it's still alive.
Germany quickly takes control of the situation and explains to Italy that he was the weakest, and with his sacrifice, he was saving the lives of his
Oh, it's
friends.
just a logic, I forgot.
Germany then embraces Italy and comforts him as Japan finishes the procedure. More time passes. Japan and Germany are sitting around the lifeless body of Italy, and the remains of his organs placed beside him.
Oh.
In the final shot, the camera zooms in on Italy's face. His lifeless eyes are staring at the sky, smiling, as the screen fades to black.
Damn. Number 23.
Tom and Jerry, Lost
I
Episode.
love Tom and Jerry.
It opens up with Tom and the owner in a typical house. Tom's owner seemed even angrier than other Tom and Jerry episodes. The first scene shown in the episode shows the owner stomping on Tom's tail in a very realistic and painful way, because Tom was sleeping by the basement door. The owner then starts yelling at Tom to never go down
Don't
there.
go there.
Tom, clearly terrified, runs away to another room. Jerry then comes out of a mouse hole and follows Tom into the next room. The next few minutes then show the regular Tom and Jerry routine, where Jerry tricks Tom into chasing him into the basement door a few times.
Wow.
But each time the owner catches Tom, inflicts realistically painful injuries, which stays with Tom even after the scene ends.
Damn.
After this, Tom starts to cry and mumbles to Jerry not to bother him anymore. You can tell what he's doing by his body language.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry just laughs at him and pushes him back to the basement door. The owner catches him again, but this time goes ballistic. Jerry seemed like he was finally taking pity on Tom. So Jerry picks up a knife and starts stabbing the owner in the leg, quite graphically. Soon after, Tom opens the basement door, and they carry the body down the stairs. Multiple other bodies were then seen down there, decaying and showing signs of their violent deaths. Tom and Jerry shook hands, but Jerry suddenly gets an evil look in his face, and Tom says in a ghastly, deep voice, "Don't you believe it?" Jerry stabs Tom, killing him instantly, and throws his corpse along with the other bodies. The last shot of the episode then shows Jerry putting up a for sale sign on the yard of the house, laughing, clearly planning to do it all over again.
Jeez, that's a face I didn't miss. Number 22.
Max and Ruby 0004. Max and Ruby is an animated series aimed at preschoolers. Each episode consists of 3 self-contained vignettes. Within each, Ruby is typically engaged in some sort of project or activity, while Max has a particular interest of his own, which either runs counter to Ruby or distracts her. One version was strangely different. In this video, a DVD box was found in someone's house.
Taxes, by the way.
It was different than normal Max and Ruby box art. This one had looked like it was crudely drawn in a black marker. On the back of the box, it listed 4 episodes, but they were not named correctly.
Pretty descriptive.
The DVD itself was not scratched and looked in pristine condition. The episode selection screen was strangely isolated, with just a white screen with black text. The titles of the episodes were called Max and Ruby 1, with the numbers being changed as it went down the list.
Okay.
From what the sources say, the only memorable moment of the DVD was the disturbing static frame of Max and Ruby standing next to each other in complete darkness. They were drawn with no mouths, no noses, and their eyes were replaced with black, hollow holes. The colors were red, and there was a faint static sound in the background. When viewing the DVD more closely, the episode 4 had now been replaced with Rest in Peace, Mommy and Daddy. While the episode itself goes static at this point, it's believed that in the episode, Max and Ruby's parents murder one another. A gravestone is faintly seen with the words, Rest in Peace, Mommy and Daddy written on it. Loud voices are heard, and the scene shows what looks like Max and Ruby
With Max
hanging
hanging
himself
himself
in the ceiling, and Ruby walking in on him. In the final scene, it shows Ruby sitting near 2 gravestones, one with Rest in Peace, Mommy and Daddy, and another one saying, Rest in Peace, Brother. She then looks at the camera, and the screen goes to a static image of Ruby, this time with the text saying, Death is our only release.
Yep, pretty dark, and it's sadly on a Creepypasta. Sad. Number 21.
Happy Abby.
Were there before?
Happy Abby aired on Nick Jr. early in the year of 1999. The star of the show was an apple named Happy Abby, who helped children when they got injured. The first 2 episodes were normal and went well. In Happy's Vacation, he goes on a vacation to the beach, heals injured kids, and even talks down on a bully into not hurting a child. The second episode, Hurt Happy, was about Happy's stick getting broken, and the children teamed up to help Happy Abby by giving him bandages and fruit. But as the episodes progressed, the show became weirder and weirder.
Sorry about the buffers, guys.
A scene in episode 4, Nate needs help. Happy aids Nate, who has a bruise on his knee. He looked at the camera, giving off an evil smile, and says,
What does Nate need for his boo-boo?
Is this recorded?
He continues to stare for 30 seconds, and then broke silence by saying,
That's right, a bandage.
Happy Abby was made out of clay with arms, baby blue eyes, and large dark green lips, being held up by a bent, rusty stick. As the show continued broadcasting on Nick Jr. every fortnight, the show became much more sinister. The rusty bent stick that was used became cleaner, and he began to develop a sinister stare with an evil grin. By episode 7,
Here's a new picture.
he wasn't even made out of clay anymore.
It's a new picture.
As soon as the 8th episode aired, the show was suddenly taken off the air. Along with all the recent episodes, every trace of Happy Happy was removed, and not much is known about its existence. The TV show was planned to have 3 seasons, but they were never aired, possibly due to the sheer brutality and creepiness of the show altogether.
Well then. Number 20.
Angry Sylvester.
Looney Tunes.
There was an episode back in 1998 which starred Sylvester from the Looney Tunes. This episode was reported as being strangely different and disturbing when compared to other previously aired episodes.
Is that real?
This particular episode did not have the same intro as the Looney Tune cartoons usually would. It just skipped the title screen and displayed a living room of a house which was drawn entirely in 2 colors, red and black,
Like the Virtual Boy.
with no music. The only sound that could be heard during this part was a woman speaking in Hungarian saying, "Directed by." The creepy thing about it is that Cartoon Network had not been broadcasted in Hungarian
I
yet.
know, right?
There was no fade, but rather a jump cut straight to the next scene. It showed a bruised, eyeless Sylvester, standing in front of him something that appeared to resemble a military base. The scene was accompanied with dead silence. He didn't say anything. He just looked angry. In the next scene, he entered the military base, but no one was there. Sylvester wanted revenge on the people for what they did to him.
What'd they do?
His claws grew to a ridiculous size, covered in blood. He started to sabotage the military base by destroying all the lights hanging from the ceiling. The scene started flashing rapidly as he started tearing down the lights, and sparks of electricity could be heard, which sounded very loud. In the next scene, Sylvester was seen all alone in an empty room. The room's floor was blood red, and the walls looked as if it were on fire. The room contained 2 tables, a large one with a toy and screwdriver on it, and a small one with a TV. The beams coming out of the window were misaligned, so they resembled an inverted crucifix. But outside the window was pitch black. Sylvester proceeded to repair the toy Dalek when the TV suddenly turned on by itself. The TV displayed an extremely creepy cartoon with music that sounded like somebody randomly banging an electric guitar. A few seconds later, it switched to a long empty room, with darkness on one end and Porky Pig on the other. He started firing his gun at the other end of the room, saying things to the monster.
What'd he say?
Then the scene turned to static. A few seconds later, a very loud bang was heard, and the screen faded to red. It then faded back to Sylvester in his room, standing next to the wreckage of his TV, looking even more angry, with more bruises, and his eyes were now tinged blood red.
Ooh.
That creepy image of the horrifying, angry Sylvester stayed on the screen for about 10 seconds, then switched to black. After that, the normal Cartoon Network screen came back, with the normal coming up next screen.
Strange. Number 19.
The Three Stooges, Dead Dunderheads. In 1947, an episode, Halfwit's Holiday, was about to come to theaters. According to the police, only 3 or 4 individuals had arrived in the theater to watch a simple screening of what they thought would be Halfwit's Holiday. It was later found out to be much more than that. The episode was wildly different than the standard Three Stooges episode. While the general foolishness and silly humor was present, it wasn't until blood was shown that the episode started feeling more disturbing. After a small incident where Moe trips over Larry's ladder, the two begin the usual fighting. But instead of the usual cartoonish sound effects and silly hand movements, Moe uses a screwdriver and rams it into Larry's eye. Larry is assumed dead at this point, since he isn't shown to be moving. The audio and video then cut out, but it is shown that Curly left tools all over the floor. He falls on one of them and accidentally grabs a saw on the way down, injuring himself. The video blacks out again, and this time there is a dispute between Moe and Curly. The two get into a fight, which eventually leads to Curly killing Moe on stage with a hammer.
Damn.
Curly is critically injured by Moe's last attempt for revenge, but quickly passes out on camera. The police of the theater eventually told its audience to leave and removed the film from the screening room. Upon further investigation, it was believed the original producer of the video was kidnapped, and an alternate, snuffed version of the film was created instead, featuring actors who resembled the main stars.
Yeah, they love Three Stooges. Number 18.
Teletubbies. Seesaw. An uncut, possibly snuffed
version
of the Teletubbies show was reported on VHS back in 1995. The tape was labeled Seesaw and featured the Teletubbies running down a hill to a static image of a seesaw. The image was shown for several minutes before a woman's voice could be heard telling the audience she was coming to get them. A bear's face flashed on the screen, and it opened its mouth, saying that it too was coming to get them. The seesaw was seen again, but this time with gore around it. The only known seesaw episode the Teletubbies were featured in was episode 11 of season 1.
Early childhood.
It was apparently the first ever episode to feature the bear. This caused several parents to complain about the sketch being too scary for their children.
As if the Teletubbies themselves weren't scary enough. Number 17.
Arthur, Death of Grandma. Arthur is an animated educational television series for children, with its first episode back in 1996. Arthur often deals with important issues that families face, such as asthma, dyslexia, cancer, and Asperger's syndrome. In this lost episode, unlike normal episodes, it does not show the opening title of the episode. It shows Arthur and his father sitting in a waiting room of Elwood City Hospital. Arthur's mother then walks in on them and informs them that Grandma has passed away, shocking both Arthur and DW. The next scene shows Arthur at a funeral with a white casket of his grandma. Except, when the casket was open, it wasn't his grandma, but his actual mother. Arthur began screaming aloud, and sudden flashes of himself being in the casket formed in the scene. The next scene showed a basic title called Recovery, and was written on a plain white background. Arthur appeared in a room, and when his pet pal came in and started barking, Arthur kicked him and slammed the door shut.
That's rude.
The next scene showed Arthur sneaking off to visit his grandma's grave. He dug through the earth and found the coffin, and then opened this inside of it. The screen went black, and there was a low sound that rose high above the chatter, which was the Tibbles laughing. The final scene showed Arthur sitting at the sugar bowl with a corpse of Buster at the floor. There were a few white flashes, and it showed him in prison with Arthur screaming that he murdered them all. Kate, DW, his dog. But not his parents. For it seemed that Thura had made him.
I can see why. Number 16.
The Simpsons. Dead Bart.
Here we go.
The episode started off like any other episode, but it had very poor quality animation. The first act was fairly normal, but the way the characters acted just did seem a little off. Homer certainly seemed a lot angrier. Marge seemed very depressed. Lisa seemed oddly anxious. And Bart seemed to have a genuine anger and hatred for his parents.
Teens.
The Simpson family then went on a plane near the end of the first act. The plane was taking off, and as you guessed it, Bart was fooling around.
Yeah.
For a split second, Bart breaks a window on the plane and gets sucked out. With the camera zooming in Bart's corpse.
Wow.
When Act 2 started, Homer, Marge, and Lisa were sitting around their table, crying. The crying went on for several minutes. A message saying 1 year later comes across the screen, and it shows Homer, Marge, and Lisa, skeletally thin, and still sitting at the same table. For some reason, Maggie was not present.
Maybe it's not meant for babies.
In the next scene, they visit Bart's grave. Springfield was completely deserted, and as they walked to the cemetery, the houses became more and more decrepit. The view zoomed out as the episode came to a close. The tombstones in the background had the name of every Simpsons guest star on them. They even had the correct dates of death when some of the crew members would die.
Yep. Number 15.
Regular show.
That
I
ended
can
quickly.
fix this. This last episode is more of an uncut version of the original, but nonetheless, it's much more gory and intense. The creator of the show, J.G. Quintal, invited his friends over to watch the screening of the new episode, I Can Fix This. Everything played out normal until it got to the freezer scene where the protagonists Mordecai and Rigby get locked inside the park freezer. Mordecai blamed Rigby for the situation and started attacking him. The duo ended up in a scuffle, and in one scene it showed Mordecai strangling Rigby in a realistic fashion. What's more, for a cartoon, blood was shown in the scene, and in another, Mordecai was gaining satisfaction in torturing Rigby. The episode ends when Mordecai kills Rigby and simply smiles to himself.
Yep, I know he never do that. Number 14.
Real Monsters. Final Scare.
Never seen it.
Real Monsters is an American animated television series about adolescent monsters in training. It was developed for Nickelodeon and featured 3 monsters, Ickis, Obelina, and Crumb, who attended an institute for monsters under a city dump and learned to frighten humans. An article explained how one version of the show was filmed on a VHS tape. The person had found it at a yard sale.
'Cause it's rare.
This episode featured a more gruesome and darker story than the original episodes. Inside the Monster Academy, the Gumball was seen telling Ickis, Obelina, and Crumb and Zimbo that tonight the 4 of them would team up and perform one final scare. In the next scene, Crumb was thrown under a bus by Obelina, where he is killed instantly. Ickis crept up behind a mime and dug his claws into a man's skull. The mime fell backwards onto Ickis, killing him. Zimbo chokes a woman to death, but is stuck inside her throat, and a young boy begins beating himself on the sidewalk.
I'm crying.
The scene then changes back to the Monster Academy, where the Gumball starts congratulating Obelina on her success by killing the humans and tricking the others to suicide, while stating it was the best scare he's seen in decades. Then, the episode ends.
And she is valedictorian. Number 13.
SuicideMouse.avi.
Been there too.
Honestly, nothing is more disturbing, messed up, and creepy than this lost episode based on the popular Disney character, Mickey Mouse. Now, we have covered this one a number of times on our top 22 non-gaming creepypastas and in other places, but we'll explain it once more, because it's just that interesting. Suicide Mouse starts off with Mickey walking from left to right down a repeating street. It carries on for a bit until the sound cuts out, and the video starts to get distorted. Eventually, you hear disjointed screams, and they sound female, and this carries on until you hit the end credits, where you see the happy, well-known mouse. Now, the legend goes that the original Suicide Mouse was discovered by a higher-up Disney executive, and once he watched it, he killed himself, leaving behind what you can now find on the internet. Again, it's not sure how the video causes suicide, but the facts behind this story are incredibly spotty.
Right.
We do know that watching this video all the way through can often cause feelings of discomfort, depression, nausea, and a very deep sense of fear
and dread. Number 12.
Stick Stickly.
Yeah, I've seen him.
Stick Stickly is a fictional character created by Nickelodeon. He's a popsicle stick with googly eyes, a jelly bean nose, and a small mouth. He was the host of Nick in the Afternoon, a programming block on the network that aired summers from 1995 to 1998 on weekday afternoons. There were 6 videos on the Stick Stickly website called First Ever Stick Stickly Appearance. The first began with Stickly in front of a chalkboard. He had no nose, and his mouth was straight. He proceeded to make a few jokes, and the episode ended.
All that's on YouTube.
The second was called Stick Gets Injured. His face was the same as before, and he had a few splinters sticking out his side. The third was called Hang Stick. Stickly was hanging in the air by a piece of string tied around his waist. A little boy was playing a game of hangman, and every time he got a letter wrong, the string would move higher. The game was over when the string reached Stickly's neck. The fourth video was called Stick Quits. He was complaining that no one cared about him, and that he was treated like a toothpick. Then a little child appeared and told him that everyone loved him, so he decided to stay. The fifth video was marked Stick Gets Mad. This episode had no sound, but it showed that Stickly was shouting at a little girl who was hiding from him, and eventually she left.
I wonder what sounds like in this.
The sixth episode was called The Winner Revealed. Stickly had a dark red stain on the top of his head, and one of his eyes was an X.
Maybe he's got his ass kicked.
Stickly announced that the viewers voted for Candle Cove.
Wow. Number 11.
Rugrats, Chucky's mom.
Yeah, I love Rugrats.
Rugrats is an animated TV series for Nickelodeon. The show focuses on a group of toddlers, most prominently Tommy, Chucky, Phil, Lil, and Angelica, and their day-to-day lives, usually involving common life experiences that become adventures in the babies' imaginations. Adults in the series are almost always unaware of what the children get up to. However, this only provides more room for the babies to explore and discover their surroundings.
It does make sense.
Now, during the height of popularity, there was an adult version put to the test. Due to the disturbing nature of the pilot episode, it was never aired, but it was shown around the studio.
Could you let me know about this?
Until one morning, the adult pilot episode was mistaken for a normal episode. This episode featured Chucky standing next to his dying mother, while she sang My Only Sunshine. The scene cuts to a live-action chicken getting his head cut off, said to symphonize death by the audience. Chucky cries and screams before having a seizure. The scene then dissolves to Chucky's dad crying in a hospital waiting room. And then back to Chucky waking up, to the paramedics trying to revive him. We later find out that whatever condition that Chucky's mom had, she had inherently passed it on to him as well. The final scene shows Chucky's dad crying over the body of his now dead son.
No Chucky, no all grown up. Number 10.
1999. The year 1999 remains to be the bloodied, charred remnants of the destroyed childhoods for the kids who lived in Caledon, Ontario.
Like before.
The channel, Caledon Local 21, consisted of TV shows such as Mr. Bear Cellar and Booby. It mainly starred a poor, satanic, middle-aged man who tortured kids he kept in his basement. His shows would go from average kid show affairs to actually cutting or mutilating the kids on camera. The channel was mainly a way for Mr. Bear to lure kids into his house in order to get them to participate in his sick satanic rituals, and eventually causing them to be sacrificed. The police found a 16 by 16 foot ditch containing 16 charred bodies of children. It's rumored that he has even eaten kids, as well as takes from the age range between 4 and 16 years of age. Sadly, before the police took down his setup, he ran away. Now, as the story follows, one such kid retells his accounts with the shows that he saw, and his hunt to find out the person who portrayed Mr. Bear.
Smart kid.
The blog is still kept up to date to this very day, but I'll leave you on one final note. It's said that to this day, he's still out there in the woods on Ontario, Canada, waiting to lure unsuspecting kids into a unfavorable situation.
Again, this was covered before. Number 9.
Goosebumps. Lost episode.
Stephen King for kids,
One
everybody.
removed episode from the highly popular series Goosebumps was called Hide and Seek, which featured 3 girls, Rachel, Amy, and Emily, at a sleepover, who all sat in a circle. Amy had apparently been telling scary horror stories, but they later decided to do something fun like hide and seek. While Emily hid in the cupboard, Amy counted to 6. After several minutes, Emily wondered whether Amy had finished looking for her, so naturally she ventured out of her hiding spot and noticed another suspicious person in the room with her. This person looked different. Their face was all blurry and his voice was rather deep. He said to Emily,
Great job on the voices, dudes.
When Emily crawled back inside the cupboard, crying, the figure talked directly to the camera, repeating the same thing over and over again, till the lines got instilled into the audience's mind. It's unknown what remained of this very same episode, since there has been no known reports of Goosebumps episode titled Hide and Seek.
The Amazing World of Gumball, The Grieving. The Amazing...
Yeah, this was only referenced as like a joke in like one of the episodes called The Compilation. Yeah.
The World of Gumball is an animated television series produced by Cartoon Network. The series revolves around the life of Gumball Watterson, a 12-year-old cat who attends middle school in the fictional city of Elmore. Accompanied by his adoptive goldfish brother and best friend Darwin, he frequently finds himself involved in various shenanigans around the city. One summer in 2012, during a commercial break, a special episode was about to start. The title of the episode came up and was listed as The Grieving.
Yeah.
Not too much is known about this depressing version of the show, other than Aaahh and Darwin both going missing. Both Nicole and Richard are called into Principal Brown's office, where he informs them in nauseating detail of how their bodies were found. Aaahh mutilated with her head missing and a note which was never shown to the audience, but it did explain where Darwin's corpse was.
Yeah, Darwin's corpse is found in like the woods along with Aaah's full body, and fully nude. Yeah, and as for Gumball,
They had found him in Miss Simeon's classroom, hanging by a noose, with a blood-covered knife behind him and blood covering his clothing.
That's Gumball.
The episode ended with the shot of Gumball's dead body hanging there in the corner, fading to black.
Number 7.
Little Bear and the Big Red Book. This last episode was rather an animation made by the author's brother, but nonetheless, it contained something rather unfortunate. The whole episode revolved around this big red book, which Father Bear was reading. Little Bear noticed how sad and angry he looked when his father read it, and when he left the room, Little Bear would start reading from it. A voice that was not spoken by Little Bear or anyone from the show started reading the disturbing poems. For every poem that was read, Little Bear got more and more depressed, and everything in the show slowly started to fade to grayscale, except for the book, which was still red. Suddenly, everything stops and cuts to Mother Bear, tucking Little Bear back into bed. But Little Bear looked extremely shocked and stared straight at the audience with a blank expression. His eyes were extremely bloodshot and his fur was all mangled.
How'd she not notice?
As the Mother Bear turned off the lights and left the room, Little Bear slowly started to sing as the room got more dark.
My body lies over the ocean. My body lies over the sea. My body lies over the ocean. Who'll bring back my body to me?
A pair of red eyes appeared above Little Bear. Then, a terrifying little laugh of a creature jumped onto Little Bear. The entire screen cut to white, then slowly faded to a montage of different scenes of running water. Then, it faded to a picture of the author when he was a child, standing next to a grave with his mother's name on it, which was strange because his mother was still alive.
Makes him think. Number 6.
Crybaby Lane. Not many of you would know of the late 90s Nickelodeon film Crybaby Lane, because it was never aired outside of the US, nor released on VHS until 2011, due to the film's inappropriate and scary content.
Yeah, that was originally, like the date, like 25 days after I was born. Crazy.
Apparently, the original Crybaby Lane was much different than what was planned. Witness reports indicated that in 1999, a staff member who worked in the creative production team explained that the film's director was creepy and loved the idea of making the movie more scary than it normally should be.
Is this true?
The plot of the film was about two brothers who unleash a demon by accident. They then try and repair the damages and get everything back to normal. It's clear that the director wanted to make much more terrifying scenes, but no one fought against his ideas.
Nah.
It wasn't until the third week that he began suggesting these things, one of which was a scene where one of the brothers was to get hit with a truck halfway through the film. Many of the production team absolutely refused this idea. But a week later, during a brainstorming session, the witness claimed that the director had locked the meeting room door and had forced them to watch a black and white projection screen showing a decapitated boy. As the camera zoomed in on the face, the director shut off the screen and let them all leave.
Wow.
The strange thing about the director's suggested ideas was that they were used in later Nickelodeon shows.
That's strange.
One suggested that the two brothers captured a squirrel, putting it into a jar, and slowly drowning it before filling the jar with sand and dropping it into the bottom of a pond, which led to the existence of Sandy from SpongeBob SquarePants.
And now you know. Number 5.
Rap-A-Rat. Rap-A-Rat was a 1992 board game where players would attempt to move around the board to collect puzzle pieces while trying not to run out of time. The gameplay involves rolling a color-coded die and moving pieces around a circular track of color-coded spaces. The difference with this board game is it had a VHS tape to play along with.
Yeah, that's the same concept as Nightmare. Yeah, the board game in the heck has a VHS tape. I wonder if there's a connection. Probably not.
Rap-A-Rat the character would appear on the television and say funny quotes to the players. Player interaction is one of the most important parts of any good board game. And this game certainly had lots of that, constantly reminding each child to hurry up and have their go, explaining to each child that Rap-A-Rat is telling them to jump up and down on the spot until he says stop. There were very few copies made for the game, but reports indicated that children would end up getting afraid or start crying. The longer they played, according to children, it was described as a monster rat with bigger ears and fish eyes. It apparently spoke much louder with a growl, and what was shown instead of a static screen was disturbing content such as syringes, a hornet stinging someone's eyes, and a man about to jump from a balcony. When adults viewed the VHS tape, they reported the content as normal. But the more they watched it, the more disturbing the content became. Rap-A-Rat would no longer look like a puppet, but would now have fur and its eyes being huge and staring.
Looks real.
The static images were more gruesome, this time showing images of decapitation and abandonment. There were several thousand complaints lodged towards the companies responsible. Upon further investigation, it was believed that a company, a couple of cowboys, was responsible for the board game Rap-A-Rat that had apparently become defunct in 1994, 2 years after the release. Rumors speculated that they commissioned a manufacturing company in Haiti to create the character portrayed in the game. One of the workers suffered a tragic accident in the making of the character. It was said the character was demonic, with the curse getting stronger the more its name, a parrot, was mentioned. The company would name the character to Rap-A-Rat instead.
Or Rappy if you want. Number 4.
Ed, and Eddy, Lost Episode. As you may know, the popular show Ed, and Eddy has been running for a long time. However, between October 7th, 2003 and October 21st, 2003, episode 34 was accidentally released 1 week before it was scheduled to.
Wait, hold on. Like, is that like real by like Wikipedia? Cause that kind of space. Oh, can you let me know? Thank you.
Apparently, the quality of the episode was mediocre when held to the regular standards. Animation was choppy, sound was restricted and very muffled. Reports of a line running up and down, similar to a VHS tape, were received. It began with Eddy and Ed walking down the street without Double D. Eddy looked very angry and with red around his irises, and Ed had tears in his eyes, as if something sad had just happened. After that, it changes to a claymation sequence of Double D sleeping in Eddy's bed. This scene was seen from a bird's eye view.
Maybe it's a sleepover?
The scene changes again, this time to Jimmy and Sarah at the dentist.
Yeah, and at the dentist, the original story, that it says that Jimmy's retainer is all damaged. All his teeth were missing and bleeds from his gums. And his arms and legs were missing. Damn.
Once that had ended, it cut to commercials.
Better.
When the show came back, it showed a very Rolf fisting a cow on a loop, and the scene changes once more.
Yeah, see that picture? This was basically like taken from Eddy and Eddy's Big Picture show. Just added a lot of hair. Oh, and good job, Tatsa Videos. That Oz or whoever. Yeah, it's Tats. Yeah, good job, guys. And good job, Tats. That really convinced me.
This time, to Naz sitting on her couch reading a magazine. The quality at this part became perfect, unlike the rest of the episode. Johnny then comes up from Naz's couch and crawls out on all fours in a way you would usually see in a cartoon. The odd thing about him was that his eyes appeared to be missing. And all of a sudden, Johnny started swallowing Naz's head, still in a cartoon fashion. And it changed to the final scene. Double D laying on Eddy's floor for the remainder of the episode.
Yeah, Double D in his bed. I don't know why. Maybe they had a sleepover last night. Number 3.
Squidward's suicide.
We've been there.
There was an episode of SpongeBob called Squidward's Suicide, and it was removed because of its graphic imagery. It begins with Squidward practicing his clarinet, hitting a few sour notes, and SpongeBob and Patrick annoying him as usual. He leans out of the window and tells them to go away as he has a big concert that night. SpongeBob and Patrick then go off to see Sandy. The scene then changes to the concert, where Squidward begins playing. This is where things get odd. The audience began booing him with what appeared to be realistic crowd recordings. What was even stranger was everyone had what we call hyper-realistic eyes.
Yeah, in tradition. Yeah, it's unlike SpongeBob and Patrick to like boo Squidward. Like, everyone knows traditionally that SpongeBob and Patrick keep annoying Squidward, even though they both mean well. They always end up causing huge problems for Squidward, and they still love him though.
The scene changes to Squidward sobbing on his bed for several minutes. Two still images appear a fraction of a second of one mangled corpse of a boy and another of a girl. Squidward then puts a gun to his mouth, and a voice says, he pulls the trigger. Then, the episode ends.
Number 2. Almost to the end, guys. Hang in there.
Candle Cove. On a forum site called Net Nostalgia, a couple of nostalgic users looked back on a particular obscure kid show which seemed different than other kid shows. Around 1971 or 1972, a kid show, simply known as Candle Cove, was broadcasted in a local TV station at around 4 p.m. on Channel 58. The show was about a little girl named Janice, who imagined herself to be friends with pirates, which took place in Candle Cove on a ship called the Laughingstock. with a pirate named Pirate Percy that got too scared very easily. What was weird about Pirate Percy is that it is made with a real low budget, built with parts of other dolls, and his head was an old porcelain baby doll, which looked like it shouldn't belong with the body. The show introduced a creepy villain who has a nightmarish skeleton marionette called the Skin Taker. It had glass eyes that were too big for its skull, and jaws that didn't open and close, but rather slide back and forth. One time, the little girl asked him why its mouth moves like that, and the Skin Taker replied, "To grind your skin." One of the most controversial episodes aired. After the opening jingle, the show faded in from black, and all the characters were there, but the camera was just cutting each character, and there was just screaming, with the puppets and marionettes flailing erratically. The girl was just shaking, moaning and crying, as though she had been through hours of it.
Yep, that story's been now in Channel Zero.
A user asked his mother if she remembers a kid show named Cove. She said she was surprised. He could remember that, and when he asked why, she responded, "Because I used to think it was so strange that you said, 'I'm going to watch Cove now,' and then you would tune the TV to static and watch dead air for 30 minutes. You had a big imagination with your little pirate show."
Yeah. And finally, number 1.
Lost episodes. In 1985, an old news article told the story of two people who were close friends since their childhood. One of the friends was called Sid, who was slightly handicapped. Since a young age, Sid had always had a passion for cutting videotapes, since his father showed him how to operate machines. His passion quickly grew to an obsession, where he would cut the ends of his father's wedding videos and replace them with other happy endings. Sid's obsession with cutting tapes grew, and his hunger for more increased. With more greed and more hunger, he became less scared of horror and chose a more darker side of his creating ability, rather than the original happy side he once had. His ability to remove a character from a shot and replace scenes that actors were not supposed to appear in gradually made him construct his own little studio room in his parents' garage. Sid was reported as a very gifted artist, having artistic skills for both drawing and animating. The images drawn, however, are shown to represent Sid's darker side of him, such as a dancing, headless body. It wasn't until 4 years ago that the other friend of Sid's had tried to contact him. He had already visited Sid's house before, but that was 14 years before. He recalled the house being entirely barren, with graffiti and overgrown weeds. When he had ventured inside looking for Sid, he found the remains of Sid's parents. Sid himself was later found in the same garage. He sat in an office chair with wires and cables connected directly to his body from the television.
Christ.
The body of Sid seemed rotten, almost skeletal, and had parts decaying, the wires trailing out.
Alright. That's the end of this list. And that's my reaction to top 25 lost episode creepypastas. Like, wow. Who knew that it was been that long? I mean, and please excuse like the poor quality that had and throughout most of the video. It's just the best I got. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you actually enjoyed it, and subscribe for more of these videos. And as always, I will be seeing you in the next video.